Hey everybody, this is Lexi and thank you so much for joining me for another session. With the current client base I have as an engineer, a lot of my clients tend to book 1-hour sessions, but I keep running into the same issue of that hour being wasted in one way or another. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to make the most of your 1-hour session if you choose to book one. With my clients, what used to happen all the time before we started communicating was they would show up for their 1-hour sessions. They wouldn't know what kind of beat they wanted to record to. They wouldn't know the mood of the song that they wanted to record. So we'd spend about 10 or 15 minutes actually searching for a beat online. In a previous video, I mentioned about booking a 2-hour session if you're a new artist and it's your first time going to the studio. The reason why I recommend doing that is because, one, you're a new artist, you're not used to being in the studio, so you need to get into, the mood. You need to see how you work when you're in the studio. How do you perform singing for a complete stranger who is the engineer, who's probably someone you haven't met before, and what are some habits that you can develop to get yourself to be comfortable in the studio? Now, if you're a brand new artist, I do not recommend getting a 1-hour session, especially if you don't know how it is to be in a studio. The problem with 1-hour sessions is that the client usually doesn't plan it out. The song can end up sounding messy. The structure could be all over the place to where the quality of the song would not be that of one that you would hear playing on the radio. And a 1-hour session is really not for people who are trying to freestyle. A common misconception that I used to get with my clients before, educating them a little bit once they kept coming back, was you cannot freestyle an entire song. Unless you have amazing skills like that, unless you've been doing this for a very long time, to me, it's not a good idea for you to come into the studio and freestyle, because the structure suffers. A lot of times the topic of the song doesn't flow. As far as content is concerned, the song ends up not sounding very good. It is possible to record a terrible song with amazing sound quality. So that's why I wanted to do this video, to kind of give you an idea of what you should be doing before you come into a studio if you book a 1-hour session. So what are the consequences of not showing up to your 1-hour session prepared? And what I mean by prepared is planning out the structure of your session and basically how you want it to go. You have 1 hour, so you really need to make sure that you're keeping track of yourself and making sure that you're staying within certain time constraints, right? So you have the time that it takes the engineer to set up the Pro Tools session, to get the tempo and the key, and then you have the time that it takes to bounce your song at the end of the session. That could take 5 to 10 minutes. If you don't know what beat you're using for the session, that could take anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. I've been in sessions with clients who didn't know what kind of vibe, what kind of mood they were in, and they knew that they wanted the track to sound like a certain artist, that type of style, but they didn't know what kind of mood they were personally in. So we took about 20 minutes of their 1-hour session just looking for a beat, and then downloading that beat, and then I had to find the key and find the tempo, and then we got into getting the levels and setting the mic stand for the client. So that was a lot of time wasted simply because the artist wasn't sure what he or she wanted to do. The reality for a 1-hour session, 1 hour should really go to one song. I have had clients come in who they want to do 2 or 3 songs in 1 hour. In my opinion, it's not a good idea, because I really think that the quality of the song suffers when you feel like you need to rush yourself just to get this content out. So I recommend that you get a 1-hour session if you're going to do one song. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I would recommend that for rappers only, just because, in my opinion, singers have a lot more detail that they have to add to the song. So I would recommend, as a singer, at least 2 hours for a session. If you're a rapper, at least 1. I think you can get away with it. If you're a singer, you could get away with 1 hour too. But again, it all comes down to how much planning did you do before you got to the session, right? I've seen it happen over and over again where these artists that come into the studio, they hear these songs on the radio and the songs seem simple enough, or it seems like the artist may have just freestyled it and it was put onto the radio. A lot of people don't realize that songs actually take a lot of practice and a lot of manicuring to kind of mold it into its best version so that it is decent enough to be put onto the radio. So the common misconception when a lot of artists come in, especially rappers, is that they can freestyle on the spot or they can write on the spot. And Again, I do not recommend doing that when you come in for a 1 hour session, because you simply don't have that time to play around and be creative without feeling pressured to get everything finished in a certain time constraint, right? So how can you make sure that you're making the most of your 1 hour session? As I've mentioned in previous videos, if you already have your engineer's email, go ahead and email those beats to your engineer. If you don't have the engineer's email, you need to make sure you have all of your beats in one spot. So you can email them to yourself, put it in one message so you're not scrambling and searching through all of your emails to find what beat you want, or you can have it on the thumb drive, and that way all of your songs are in one spot and can be pulled up whenever you need them, whenever you're ready to record it. That helps save a lot of time as far as not having to search for a beat to use and not thinking about what kind of mood you want. A lot of people do want to come into the studio to get, the whole vibe of the studio and to get that creativity flowing just from the atmosphere of being in a setting like this. But the reality is, if you're not as skilled or as seasoned as some of these other rappers out here, it usually does not work out with a freestyle. Again, the song structure suffers. You might have a verse that's like 32 bars long, but a hook that's only 4 bars long. Or some rappers have ended up with a 16-bar hook, but an 8-bar verse. And the structure of the song really suffers. If you're serious about your craft and you're serious about, wanting to release the music and have it for people to listen to, structure is a huge part of that. If people can't easily follow along with your song, they're less likely to want to sing along. They're less likely to want to buy. And that's on another marketing, that's song structure. There's a bunch of different factors that go into that. But that is part of what determines if people are going to buy or like your song. How easy is it for them to follow along to? How catchy is it? How quickly can they pick up those lyrics? But if they don't really know what to expect because your structure is all over the place, then it's less likely that people are going to want to listen. It's less likely that people are going to want to buy. And I'll get into more detail about that in another video, but that's the basic gist of why you want to make sure you're planning out your session before you come in. You want your song structure to make sense. And then you want the content of your song to also make sense. You can't jump from topic to topic and expect it to be a hit song. If the song is not flowing, then people are not going to feel it. You may have felt it in the moment, but what tends to happen with rappers who are not as seasoned and they think they can freestyle, they end up just talking a lot about nothing, and the hook doesn't link to the verse. The verses don't link. There's no storytelling going on. It's just a nice beat and some words that happen to rhyme, right? So before you get into the session, make sure that you already have a song that you want to do, something that's already written, something that you know by heart. But again, bring those lyrics, because it's happened to artists before where they get stuck and they don't know what their next line is. So you want to have those lyrics available and ready for you, on hand in case you get, frozen, in case you get a little shy in front of the engineer. As time winds down, the artist tends to feel a lot of pressure, right? So there's no more freedom, there's no more creativity freely flowing, because the artist feels like, I only have 30 minutes left, I have to get this song done, I have to say something. If you want to minimize the amount of mistakes that you're going to make during a session, you will make mistakes during a session, and that's okay. If you want to minimize that, just make sure that you have a song already planned and that you've practiced it a few times. Again, I've mentioned this in a previous video, but it's good to reiterate it because it's going to come in handy if you want to book a 1 hour session. You come to the studio when you want your song to sound polished, when you want it to have radio quality. But if you don't do your part by making sure that you know exactly what you want to do and you know exactly how you want it to sound, it's not going to be a good song regardless, right? So a lot of what I've been talking about so far in this video has been geared mostly towards rappers. The same thing can be applied to singers who want to book a 1 hour session. Again, my personal recommendation as a singer myself, it takes me realistically like 4 to 6 hours to make sure that every part of my song is the way that I need it to sound, and that I have all the harmonies that I heard recorded onto the track. That's just me. I would book at least a 4-hour session because of the style of singing that I have and because the amount of detail that I like to put into my work. Depending on the type of song you're recording as a singer, you may be able to get away with a 1-hour session as well. I've actually had a lot of singing clients come in and they'll book 2 hours thinking that they need to use the whole time. They actually end up walking out in one. Why is that? Because before they came to the session, they had their lyrics written out, they had already practiced, so they knew where they wanted to place their harmonies and how they wanted to say certain lines and the tone that they wanted to deliver it in. So you can get away having a 1-hour session, whether you're a rapper or a singer. Again, it just depends on how prepared you are. But I would really recommend that if you're getting a 1-hour session, you use that 1 hour to focus on one specific song. Don't try to cram more than one song in that 1 hour because, again, the quality of the song, the overall quality will suffer if you try to rush anything. And you just want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward when you come into the studio. You are coming to the studio for a quality sound, so you need to have a quality and professional demeanor, a quality and professional mindset about coming into the studio and working. There's a lot of competition out there with a lot of people who may sound better than you. So the worst thing that you can do is make the mistake of not taking your craft seriously, because there are literally thousands, if not millions of people who do take it seriously and who do take the time to plan it out before coming to the studio. So I just wanted to impart that wisdom to you. I hope that after listening to this video, you're getting some ideas in your head as to how you can make the most of your time. I do understand that not all of us have a lot of money to, keep coming back to the studio to fix things that didn't sound right from the first session. Well, if you just make sure you plan it right, you won't have to come back and you won't have to keep spending your money or wasting your time. Planning is everything. And with that being said, that is the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up. If there's something that you liked in particular, comment below and let me know what you liked. Or if you have any more additional questions for me, let me know as well so I can address it in some future videos. But again, thank you all for watching. Until next time. It's like full immersion into becoming an artist. I realize that it's going to take a lot of work, and I realize that it's not going to just happen overnight. It has to be consistency on my part. If I'm not being consistent, then I'm going to fall to the wayside. So that's what, you have to think of as an artist. How committed are you? How badly do you really want it? You can say you want it, but if you're not putting in